The Xilos had been keeping secrets for a long time. They were the oldest species in the galaxy. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched stars born and die. They had collected knowledge for 12 million years. Most of that knowledge was stored in the Great Archive, a massive library hidden deep inside a dead moon. Only the highest Xilos elders had access. The archive was sacred. The archive was secret. The archive held the truth about everything. Kale was a young Xilos researcher. She was curious. Too curious. Her elders warned her not to explore too deeply. Some secrets were better left hidden. But Kale could not stop. She had been given access to the archive as part of her training. She was supposed to study the history of the Voth. Instead, she found a forgotten section. A section that had not been opened in 1,000 years. The dust was thick. The seals were old. The files were classified at the highest level. She hesitated. Her elders would be angry. But her curiosity was stronger than her fear. She opened the first file. It was labeled Human Variable. Kale had heard of humans. They were a young species. A small species. A primitive species. They had only recently discovered space travel. They had no empire. No fleets. No advanced technology. The other species ignored them. The Xilos ignored them. Everyone ignored them. Kale had never thought much about humans. They seemed so ordinary. So forgettable. The file changed everything. The Xilos had known about humans for 1,000 years. They had been watching them. Studying them. Fearing them. The file contained thousands of reports. Millions of data points. Centuries of observations. The Xilos had analyzed human history. Human biology. Human psychology. Human culture. They had run simulations. Millions of simulations. Every possible outcome. Every possible future. The results were always the same. Humans could not be predicted. Kale read the first page. Her hands shook. Her heart raced. The words burned into her mind. Humans are not a species. They are a variable. A variable is something that cannot be calculated. Every other species follows patterns. They have predictable behaviors, predictable technologies, predictable futures. Humans have none of these. Human history is chaos. Human decisions are illogical. Human creativity is unpredictable. The humans cannot be modeled. They cannot be predicted. They cannot be controlled. Kale read on. The file described human wars, human inventions, human art, human love, human hate, human hope. Everything was chaos. Everything was contradiction. The same species that built cities also built weapons to destroy them. The same species that loved each other also killed each other. The same species that dreamed of peace also prepared for war. The Xilos could not make sense of it. Their simulations failed. Their models broke. Their predictions were wrong. The file contained records of past attempts to control humans. The Voth had tried to manipulate human politics. They had funded rebellions, started wars, assassinated leaders. Nothing worked. The humans always found a way to surprise them. The Voth gave up. They left Earth alone. They never explained why. The KRYLL had tried to conquer Earth. They had sent their best fleet, their best soldiers, their best weapons. The humans had no chance. The KRYLL should have won. They did not. The humans fought with tactics the KRYLL had never seen. They used guerrilla warfare. They hacked KRYLL communication networks. They turned KRYLL technology against them. The KRYLL retreated. They never returned. They never explained why. The Xilos had tried to outthink humans. They had sent their best scientists, their best diplomats, their best spies. They had tried to understand human psychology, to predict human behavior, to manipulate human decisions. They failed. The humans were too chaotic, too contradictory, too human. The Xilos gave up. They sealed their research in this archive. They hoped no one would ever find it. Kale read the final page. It was a warning, written by the head of the Xilos Council 1,000 years ago. Do not engage the humans. Do not provoke the humans. Do not underestimate the humans. They are not a species to be conquered or controlled. They are a variable to be observed from a safe distance. Any empire that ignores this warning will face consequences that cannot be calculated. The humans are the great unknown. Leave them alone. Kale sat back. Her mind was spinning. The galaxy thought humans were weak, primitive, forgettable. The galaxy was wrong. The Xilos knew the truth. Humans were not weak. They were not primitive. They were not forgettable. They were a variable. Something that could not be predicted. Something that could not be controlled. Something that could not be stopped. She closed the file. She sat in the DAC. She thought about the humans. The small, soft, fragile creatures on the blue planet. They did not know that the galaxy feared them. They did not know that the oldest species in the universe had been watching them for 1,000 years. They did not know that they were the great unknown. They just kept being human. Unpredictable. Uncontrollable. Unstoppable. Kale made a decision. She would not keep this secret. The galaxy needed to know. The other species needed to know. They were planning to conquer Earth. To enslave humans. To destroy the variable. They did not know what they were facing. They did not know that humans could not be predicted. Could not be controlled. Could not be stopped. She copied the file. She hid it in her personal data cache. She would leak it to the galaxy. The other empires would read the warning. They would learn the truth. They would leave Earth alone. Or they would ignore the warning. And they would face the consequences. The consequences that could not be calculated. The consequences that the Xilos had feared for 1,000 years. The consequences that were called human. Kale left the archive. She walked out into the starlight. Somewhere out there, on a small blue planet, humans were living their lives. They did not know that they were the most feared species in the galaxy. They did not know that they were the great unknown. They did not know that they were a variable. They just kept being human. And that, Kale realized, was the most terrifying thing of all. Because being human meant being unpredictable. And unpredictable meant dangerous. And dangerous meant that the galaxy would never be safe. Not as long as humans existed. Not as long as the variable remained. Not as long as the great unknown kept being unknown. The galaxy would never be safe. And the Xilos knew it. They had always known it. They had just hoped no one would find out. Now Kale knew. And soon, the galaxy would know too. And everything would change. Kale read the definition 3 times. Her eyes moved slowly over the words, trying to understand. The Xilos archive was precise. Every word had been chosen carefully. Every sentence had been reviewed by 100 scholars. There was no mistake. The definition was clear. A variable was something that could not be calculated. She thought about the other species she had studied. The Vorth followed patterns. They woke at the same time every day. They ate the same foods. They followed the same routines. Their behavior could be predicted with 99% accuracy. The KRYLL were predictable too. They responded to threats with aggression. They responded to weakness with conquest. They never deviated. Their future was written. The Xilos were the most predictable of all. They valued knowledge above everything. They would always choose the logical path. They would never take risks. Their decisions could be calculated centuries in advance. Every species followed patterns. Every species was predictable. Every species could be modeled. The Xilos had proven this. They had run simulations for 12 million years. Their models were perfect. Their predictions were always right. They had never encountered a species that broke their models. They had never encountered a variable. Until humans. Kale turned the page. The archive described human history. It was chaos. Wars that started for no reason. Peace that came from nowhere. Empires that rose and fell in the blink of an eye. Revolutions that changed everything. Inventions that appeared from thin air. The Xilos had tried to find patterns. They had failed. Human history had no logic. No structure. No predictability. She read about human decisions. They were illogical. Humans often chose the harder path. They sacrificed their own comfort for strangers. They risked their lives for ideas. They fought against impossible odds. They gave up when victory was certain. The Xilos could not understand. Their models could not explain. Human decisions broke every rule. She read about human creativity. It was unpredictable. Humans created art that had never been imagined. Music that had never been heard. Stories that had never been told. They invented technologies that should have been impossible. They solved problems that had no solutions. They saw connections that did not exist. The Xilos could not predict what humans would create next. No one could. Not even the humans themselves. The archive contained records of Xilos simulations. Millions of them. Every possible scenario. Every possible future. The Xilos had tried to model human behavior. They had failed. Every simulation ended with the same conclusion. Humans cannot be modeled. They cannot be predicted. They cannot be controlled. They are a variable. Kale read the warning. It was written in bold letters. Any empire that tries to conquer or manipulate humans will face consequences that cannot be calculated. The humans are the great unknown. Leave them alone. She sat back. She thought about the other species. The Vorth were planning to expand into human space. The KRYLL were planning to conquer Earth. The Xilos were planning to study humans. They did not know about the archive. They did not know about the warning. They thought humans were weak, primitive, easy prey. They were wrong. Kale remembered a story from the archive. The Vorth had tried to manipulate human politics 1,000 years ago. They had funded a rebellion. They had started a war. They had assassinated a leader. They thought they could control human history. They were wrong. The rebellion succeeded. The war ended. The leader was replaced. But the outcome was not what the Vorth expected. The humans did something unpredictable. They united against their common enemy. They turned on the Vorth. They drove them away. The Vorth never tried again. They never explained why. The KRYLL had tried to conquer Earth 500 years ago. They had sent their best fleet, their best soldiers, their best weapons. They thought they would win easily. They were wrong. The humans fought with tactics the KRYLL had never seen. They used guerrilla warfare. They hacked KRYLL communication networks. They turned KRYLL technology against them. The KRYLL retreated. They never returned. They never explained why. The Xilos had tried to outthink humans 100 years ago. They had sent their best scientists, their best diplomats, their best spies. They thought they could understand human psychology. They were wrong. The humans were too chaotic, too contradictory, too human. The Xilos gave up. They sealed their research in this archive. They hoped no one would ever find it. Kale closed the file. She understood now. The humans were not weak. They were not primitive. They were not easy prey. They were a variable. Something that could not be calculated. Something that could not be predicted. Something that could not be controlled. The galaxy had made a mistake. They had underestimated the humans. They had ignored the warning. They were planning to conquer Earth. They did not know what they were facing. She looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, on a small blue planet, humans were living their lives. They did not know that the galaxy feared them. They did not know that the oldest species in the universe had been watching them for 1,000 years. They did not know that they were the great unknown. They just kept being human. Unpredictable. Uncontrollable. Unstoppable. Kale made a decision. She would leak the archive. The galaxy needed to know the truth. The other species needed to know that humans were not weak. They were not primitive. They were not easy prey. They were a variable. And variables could not be controlled. They could only be observed. From a safe distance. Very far away. She copied the file. She hid it in her personal data cache. She would release it to the galaxy. The other empires would read the warning. They would learn the truth. They would leave Earth alone. Or they would ignore the warning. And they would face the consequences. The consequences that could not be calculated. The consequences that were called human. The galaxy would never be the same. Because now they knew. Humans were not a species. They were a variable. And variables change everything. Always. Every time. Without exception. That was the lesson. That was the truth. That was the human variable. And the galaxy would never forget. Kale turned to the next section of the archive. It was labeled Failed Experiments. She read the title and felt a chill run down her spine. The Xilos had documented every attempt by other species to control humans. The records went back 1,000 years. Every attempt had failed. Every single one. The first record was about the Vorth. They had tried to manipulate human politics. The Vorth were masters of influence. They had controlled empires for millennia. They thought humans would be easy. They funded rebellions. They started wars. They assassinated leaders. They pulled strings from the shadows. They thought they could shape human history like clay. They were wrong. The humans did not behave as expected. They did not stay divided. They did not stay weak. They did not stay controlled. Instead, they united against their common enemy. They turned on the Vorth. They drove them away. The Vorth lost ships, lost soldiers, lost face. They never tried again. The archive noted, the humans have a unique ability to turn any situation to their advantage. They do not follow rules. They make new ones. Kale read the next record. The KRYLL had tried to conquer Earth. The KRYLL were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They had never lost a battle. They thought humans would be easy prey. They sent their best fleet, their best soldiers, their best weapons. They expected a quick victory. They were wrong. The humans did not fight like other species. They did not line up their ships and fire. They did not send their soldiers forward and charge. They used guerrilla tactics. They hit supply lines. They sabotaged communication networks. They turned KRYLL technology against them. The KRYLL were confused. They had never faced an enemy like this. They retreated. They never returned. The archive noted, humans do not accept defeat. They redefine victory. Kale read the next record. The Xilos had tried to outthink humans. The Xilos were the smartest species in the galaxy. They had solved every puzzle. They had answered every question. They thought humans would be easy to understand. They sent their best scientists, their best diplomats, their best spies. They studied human psychology for decades. They thought they could predict human behavior. They were wrong. The humans surprised them. They did things that made no sense. They made decisions that were illogical. They created art that defied explanation. They told jokes that had no punchline. The Xilos could not keep up. Their models failed. Their predictions were wrong. Their spies were discovered. Their diplomats were laughed at. They gave up. They sealed their research in this archive. The archive noted, humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Not because they are strong. Because they are unpredictable. Kale sat back. She had read enough. The archive was clear. Every attempt to control humans had failed. The Voth failed. The KRYLL failed. The Xilos failed. Even the Xilos themselves had failed. They had tried to study humans from a distance. They had tried to understand them. They had failed. The humans remained a mystery. A variable. The great unknown. She thought about the other species. They were planning to conquer Earth. They thought humans were weak, primitive, easy prey. They did not know about the failed experiments. They did not know about the archive. They did not know that humans could not be controlled. They were about to make the same mistake. The same mistake that the Voth had made. The same mistake that the KRYLL had made. The same mistake that the Xilos had made. Kale read the final note in the section. It was written by the head of the Xilos Council. The humans have a unique ability. They turn every situation to their advantage. They do not follow rules. They make new ones. They do not accept defeat. They redefine victory. They are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Not because they are strong. Because they are unpredictable. Leave them alone. Do not engage. Do not provoke. Do not underestimate. The humans are the great unknown. And the great unknown cannot be controlled. Kale closed the file. She understood now. The galaxy had made a mistake. They had underestimated the humans. They had ignored the warnings. They were planning to conquer Earth. They did not know what they were facing. They thought humans were weak. They were wrong. Humans were not weak. They were unpredictable. And unpredictable was more dangerous than strong. Always. Every time. Without exception. She looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, on a small blue planet, humans were living their lives. They did not know that the galaxy feared them. They did not know that the oldest species in the universe had tried to control them and failed. They did not know that they were the great unknown. They just kept being human. Unpredictable. Uncontrollable. Unstoppable. Kale made a decision. She would leak the archive. The galaxy needed to know the truth. The other species needed to know that humans could not be controlled. That every attempt had failed. That the only safe option was to leave Earth alone. She would release the records of the failed experiments. The Voth Rebellion. The KRYLL invasion. The Xilos study. All of it. The galaxy would read the truth. They would learn that humans were not weak. They were not primitive. They were not easy prey. They were a variable. And variables could not be controlled. They could only be feared. From a safe distance. Very far away. The galaxy would never be the same. Because now they knew. Humans were not a species. They were a variable. And variables change everything. Always. Every time. Without exception. That was the lesson. That was the truth. That was the human variable. And the galaxy would never forget. Not after reading the failed experiments. Not after learning the truth. Not after understanding that humans could not be controlled. They could only be feared. And feared they would be. From that day forward. Forever. Kale took her findings to the Xilos Council. The council chamber was grand. High ceilings. Ancient stone. Soft light. The council members were old. Very old. They had been alive for thousands of years. They had seen everything. Or so they thought. They sat in a semicircle, looking down at Kale. Their faces were calm. Their eyes were curious. They did not know what she had found. They did not know what she was about to tell them. Kale stood before them. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was racing. She had never spoken to the council before. She was young. She was nervous. She was terrified. But she knew she had to speak. The truth had to be told. Honored elders, Kale said, I have found something in the archive. Something that has been hidden for 1,000 years. A file labeled human variable. I have read it. I have studied it. I have brought it here to show you. The council members exchanged glances. They did not remember the file. They did not remember the warning. The archive was vast. Too vast. Many sections had been forgotten. Many secrets had been buried. The council had been planning to conquer Earth. They thought humans were weak, primitive, easy prey. They did not know the truth. Kale activated her data pad. The file appeared on the screen. She read the warning aloud. Her voice was shaky at first. Then it grew stronger. Do not engage the humans. Do not provoke the humans. Do not underestimate the humans. They are not a species to be conquered or controlled. They are a variable to be observed from a safe distance. Any empire that ignores this warning will face extinction. The council was silent. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Terrible. Final. The eldest council member, a being named Vorthan, spoke. His voice was quiet. I remember this warning. It was written 1,000 years ago. By my predecessor. I had forgotten. We all had forgotten. The archive is vast. Too vast. We cannot remember everything. Kale nodded. I understand. But now you remember. Now you know the truth. The humans are not weak. They are not primitive. They are not easy prey. They are a variable. Something that cannot be predicted. Something that cannot be controlled. Something that cannot be stopped. Another council member spoke. Her name was Seri. She was old. Her face was wrinkled. Her eyes were sharp. We have been planning to conquer Earth. Our fleets are ready. Our soldiers are prepared. Our weapons are aimed. Are you telling us to stop? Kale looked at her. I am telling you to read the archive. Read the records of past attempts to control humans. The Voth tried. They failed. The KRYLL tried. They failed. The Xilos tried. They failed. Every attempt ended in disaster. The humans cannot be controlled. They cannot be predicted. They cannot be stopped. The council was silent again. They had heard rumors of those failures. But they had never known the details. The archive was secret. The records were hidden. Now Kale was showing them the truth. Vorthan spoke again. What do you recommend? Kale took a breath. I recommend that we cancel our plans to conquer Earth. I recommend that we leave the humans alone. I recommend that we observe them from a safe distance. As the warning says, do not engage. Do not provoke. Do not underestimate. The council members looked at each other. They were horrified. They had forgotten about the archive. They had forgotten about the warning. They had been planning to conquer Earth. Now they knew the truth. Humans were not weak. They were not primitive. They were the great unknown. Seri spoke. Her voice was sharp. You are asking us to abandon our plans. To admit defeat. To show weakness. The other empires will laugh at us. Kale shook her head. The other empires do not know the truth. They think humans are weak. They are planning to conquer Earth too. They will make the same mistake. They will face the same consequences. We can warn them. Or we can watch them fall. The choice is yours. The council argued for hours. Some wanted to continue with the invasion. They thought the warning was old. Outdated. Irrelevant. Others wanted to cancel the invasion. They thought the warning was clear. Humans were dangerous. The great unknown. Not to be underestimated. In the end, they voted. The result was close. But the decision was made. The invasion of Earth was cancelled. The fleets were recalled. The soldiers were sent home. The weapons were powered down. Vorthan spoke to Kale after the meeting. His voice was tired. You have done something remarkable. You have reminded us of our own history. You have saved us from a terrible mistake. We are grateful. Kale bowed her head. I only did what was right. The truth had to be told. Vorthan nodded. The truth is dangerous. But it is also necessary. You have shown courage. Not many would have done the same. Kale left the council chamber. She walked out into the starlight. The sky was clear. The stars were bright. Somewhere out there, on a small blue planet, humans were living their lives. They did not know that the Xilos had planned to conquer them. They did not know that the invasion had been cancelled. They did not know that they were the great unknown. They just kept being human. Unpredictable. Uncontrollable. Unstoppable. Kale smiled. She had done what she could. She had warned the council. She had saved her people from a terrible fate. The other empires would not be so lucky. They would ignore the warning. They would underestimate the humans. They would face the consequences. The consequences that could not be calculated. The consequences that were called human. The galaxy would never be the same. Because now the Xilos knew the truth. Humans were not a species. They were a variable. And variables change everything. Always. Every time. Without exception. That was the lesson. That was the truth. That was the human variable. And the Xilos would never forget. Not after reading the warning. Not after learning the truth. Not after cancelling the invasion. They would watch from a safe distance. Very far away. And they would hope that the other empires would do the same. But they knew they would not. The other empires would make the same mistake. The same mistake that the Xilos had almost made. And they would face the same consequences. The consequences that were called human. And the Xilos would watch. And they would remember. And they would be grateful that they had listened. That they had learned. That they had survived. Because the humans were the great unknown. And the great unknown could not be controlled. Only feared. From a safe distance. Very far away. Forever. The Xilos cancelled their plans to conquer Earth. The fleets were recalled. The soldiers were sent home. The weapons were powered down. The council sealed the archive again. They hoped the other empires would never learn the truth. They hoped the warning would stay hidden. They hoped the galaxy would remain ignorant of the human variable. But Kale had other plans. She could not keep the secret. The other empires were planning to conquer Earth. They thought humans were weak. Primitive. Easy prey. They did not know the truth. They did not know that humans were a variable. Something that could not be predicted. Something that could not be controlled. Something that could not be stopped. Kale leaked the archive to the galaxy. She sent it to every empire. Every council. Every leader. She sent it to the Voth. The Kyll. The Xilos. The Xanan. Everyone. The file spread faster than light. Within days, every species in the galaxy had read the warning. Within weeks, every empire knew the truth. The galaxy was terrified. The Voth read the archive. They remembered their failed attempt to control humans. They had never explained why they retreated. Now everyone knew. They had been defeated. Not by weapons. By unpredictability. The humans had done the unexpected. They had united against their common enemy. They had driven the Voth away. The Kyll read the archive. They remembered their failed invasion of Earth. They had never explained why they retreated. Now everyone knew. They had been defeated. Not by strength. By tactics. The humans had fought with guerrilla warfare. They had turned Kyll technology against them. They had won. The Xilos read the archive. They remembered their failed study of human psychology. They had never explained why they gave up. Now everyone knew. They had been defeated. Not by intelligence. By chaos. The humans were too unpredictable. Too contradictory. Too human. The other empires read the archive. They learned about the human variable. They learned that humans could not be predicted. Could not be controlled. Could not be stopped. They learned that any empire that tried to conquer Earth would face extinction. They learned that the humans were the great unknown. The galaxy was afraid. They had never been afraid of humans before. They had thought humans were weak. Primitive. Easy prey. Now they knew the truth. Humans were not weak. They were not primitive. They were not prey. They were a variable. Something that could not be calculated. Something that could not be predicted. Something that could not be stopped. The empires cancelled their plans to conquer Earth. One by one. The Voth backed down. The Kyll retreated. The Xilos withdrew. The Xanan stayed home. No one wanted to face the human variable. No one wanted to test the warning. No one wanted to risk extinction. Earth was safe. Not because the humans were strong. Because the galaxy was afraid. Afraid of the unknown. Afraid of the unpredictable. Afraid of the human variable. The humans knew nothing of this. They continued their quiet lives. They went to work. They raised their children. They planted gardens. They told stories. They sang songs. They did not know that the galaxy feared them. They did not know that they were the great unknown. They just kept being human. Unpredictable. Uncontrollable. Unstoppable. The story ends on Earth. A small town. A small house. A small girl. Her name was Lily. She was 7 years old. She had brown hair and bright eyes. She liked to draw pictures of the stars. She sat at the kitchen table. A piece of paper in front of her. A box of crayons beside her. She picked up a blue crayon. She drew a circle. The earth. She picked up a yellow crayon. She drew a sun. She picked up white crayons. She drew stars. Hundreds of them. Thousands. The paper was full of light. Her mother came into the kitchen. She looked at the drawing. She smiled. "That is beautiful, Lily," her mother said. "What are you drawing?" Lily looked up. Her eyes were bright. "The stars," she said. "I am drawing the stars." Her mother sat down beside her. "Why do you like the stars so much?" Lily thought for a moment. Then she smiled. "Because they are so far away. And so bright. And so beautiful. And because I think they are looking back at me." Her mother laughed. "The stars are not looking back at you, silly. They are just balls of gas. Burning in space. They do not have eyes." Lily shook her head. "I think they do. I think they are watching us. I think they are afraid of us." Her mother laughed again. "Afraid of us? Why would the stars be afraid of us?" Lily picked up a crayon. She added more stars to her drawing. The paper was almost full. "Because we are human," she said. "And humans are not like other things. Humans ask questions. Humans make mistakes. Humans try again. Humans never give up. I think the stars know that. I think the stars are afraid of what we might become." Her mother stopped laughing. She looked at her daughter. She looked at the drawing. The stars were bright. The earth was small. The sun was warm. She did not know what to say. She did not know that the galaxy was afraid of humans. She did not know that the Xilos had a secret archive. She did not know that her daughter was the great unknown. She just knew that Lily was human. And humans were unpredictable, uncontrollable, unstoppable. Lily finished her drawing. She held it up. The stars shone on the paper. The earth was small. The sun was warm. The girl was smiling. "There," Lily said. "Now the stars know we are here. Now they know we are watching. Now they know we are human." She put down her crayon. She looked out the window. The sky was dark. The stars were bright. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was afraid. Somewhere out there, empires were trembling. Somewhere out there, the Xilos were watching. But Lily did not know that. She just knew that she was human. And humans were not a species. They were a variable. And variables change everything. Always. Every time. Without exception. That was the lesson. That was the truth. That was the human variable. And the galaxy would never forget. Not after reading the archive. Not after learning the truth. Not after seeing the stars. The stars that were afraid. Afraid of a little girl. Afraid of her crayons. Afraid of her dreams. Afraid of what she might become. Because she was human. And humans are the great unknown. The variable that cannot be calculated. The force that cannot be stopped. The hope that cannot be extinguished. And the galaxy, for the first time, was afraid. Not of weapons. Not of war. Of a child. Drawing stars. Being human. Changing everything. Forever.